Oh, and people like Filmbrain complain Wolverine's origins aren't necessary to know, even though it would explain where he got his violence, moral values, and stubbornness from, and it would ruin the mystery of the character, according to him. And it would be pointless as it ends with him losing his memory. Yeah, but how he lost his memory and why was endlessly teased at in the first 2 X-Men films, and build-up requires payoff, otherwise it is just pretentious. I mean, this is like criticizing Return of the Jedi for going back to Tatooine and Dagobah. That would be silly. Even though this was set up in Empire. Or at World's End for going to the land of the dead and focusing on Davy Jones under Beckett's control, while this was set up in the X-Men's chest, which you are praising. Or it would be like complaining Shrek the Third had Prince Charming, one of the villains of the second film, while he escaped at the end of the second film, clearly setting up that he would want revenge for the death of his mother. Man, I'm advertising my future content more than Iron Man 2 did the Avengers. No, that's impossible. No, a prequel or a sequel cannot be blamed for showing what the previous films set up. Also, a character losing his memory is like a character dying, only less severe, and many main characters die at the ends of films, like... No, that's not even worth mentioning. It is so obvious. You idiot. Please die now. Build up a mystery work best when they actually have a resolution, giving it a point, and meaning we get a deeper understanding of the plots and characters, and also mystery when it isn't resolved ceases being interesting as we know it is being forced and it was barely used in X3 anyways. There Wolverine's mystery lost all importance. And also Wolverine's character arc in the original films has a lot more meaning when we understand the starting point of it all. Oh yeah, I will also be reviewing the Blockbuster Busters and Filmbrain's reviews. Again, I'm like the Byzantians, who slowly but surely became poor, more subjugated and weak. Why did I use scripts which I wrote when I was drunk? Now on to what makes the plot great. Its many great twists and plot points. We see Wolverine is born in Canada in 1845 and has a bit of a harsh friend with an abusive dad, who then kills his father, and his anger first causes his mutation to appear, and it turns out that he has bone claws and he uses it to kill the killer of his father, which is of course very believable that he would kill the person who killed his father, as he is a very emotional kid and he already always had a darker side, and it's of course horrible when somebody kills your father who you love so much. And it turns out that he's his real father, which is of course also very believable, as family mix-up often happened back then with people having affairs without contraception and all that. And this is a great opening. We see Wolverine started off rather innocent, which fits a younger child, and shows he wasn't always the same, which adds depth, and we see that he discovered his father wasn't his real father, and his real father was a violent man that murdered his adopted father, who he killed as a response, showing where he got his violence and lack of identity from. And so his friend turns out to be his brother, which is believable, as yeah, he was the child of that man of which he knew that it was his son. And he also hated his father, and this explains why they would grow to be so close in spite of both being very violent, because they can both bond over being frustrated by the actual father. And this of course, all around just very complex and very smart and very surprising. And the Blockbuster Buster complains that it is 3 plot twists in a row and makes an M. Night Shyamalan joke. That is funny, but the moment you complain a joke is too obvious, I'm so gonna use that against you. Oh yeah. And yeah, it is multiple twists, like in the opening of the first X-Men, it sets up an elaborate plot, and it fits Wolverine's confusion in life. Also, family mix-up often results in multiple revelations. Oh, and Filmbrain complains we don't know, and therefore don't care, about either character. Okay, I'm gonna say this once for all, even people you don't know about dying is horrible, and this coming from this obvious, insane asshole. And also what matters is how this affects Wolverine. That is why we see it in the opening. And also Gladiator and Maximus's family we barely knew dying. And remember Gangs of New York? Also, it is a really smart twist that Wolverine and his brother fought through the many big wars of America, as they would obviously join the American army, so they would get to fight a lot. And due to their healing factors, they could live, so that makes sense. And his brother tries to rape a girl in Vietnam, which makes sense, as he turns out to become violent and sadistic, and he showed signs of coldness even to his brother. And he then takes out the soldiers who try to stop him, yet he still has a heart and he cares for Wolverine as he protected him in the opening, and they are a team, and Wolverine protects him, which makes sense as he is his brother. And it is believable they would be executed together as they fought off America's soldiers, and they would survive due to their healing powers. And of course this would make Stryker discover them, as when people can't be shot to death, yeah, that shows they have some form of superpowers, and he knows that mutants with superpowers exist. Stryker offers them to be on a special mutant team where they can have special privileges and kill all they want, and they logically accept as they are violence obsessed. All in Filmbrain says you could consider the opening in World War II, a shot of a couple of seconds, a ripoff of Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, they don't allow guns in the Vatican. Yeah, what Private Ryan realistically presented history. You cannot rip that off. And so they break into a diamond smuggler hideout with many guards, creating tension of whether they can take them all out. And it makes sense, they can, as they have a team of very strong mutants. Oh, and Filmbrain complains the diamond smuggle operations wouldn't use tanks. 1. Could you please tell me if this is all just gonna be nitpicking? Because if so, I'm gonna keep the banana around. 2. In third world countries where criminal organizations have their own private armies, and governments are often huge criminal organizations, yes, they have tanks in diamond smuggle operations there. Oh, by the way, I know that you're probably saying, hey, wait a minute, didn't you have a gun earlier? Now you're saying that you can't have them in the Vatican? Well, go fuck yourself. And then they question him about where he got a metal called adamantium from, which he could know about as he got it from the source. And also Filmbrain complains Wolverine and Sabretooth do nothing during all this. Yeah, because this is to showcase the supporting characters. The two of them had their own opening where they killed people and they will fight and kill again later in the film. Yeah, and when they find the village, the people refuse to tell where they could find the adamantium because they see it as sacred and Stryker wants to kill everyone. And it is believable as primitive tribes often consider strange objects sacred and Stryker would use violence to enforce his plans. And this perfectly fits X2. And we see Wolverine works for Stryker, as was prophesied in X2, and we see Wolverine, as in the opening, was indeed a violent killer, as he killed many people in horrible ways in the opening, and is joining Stryker now. He's also threatening to kill civilians, but he doesn't go as far as Stryker, and that shows why he was about to change, and Stryker misunderstood him. We just didn't see Wolverine being violent working under Stryker again, as it would just be needlessly repetitive, and we understand that he probably was also violent even under Stryker off screen, and we saw him being violent, we see Stryker being violent when they don't per se need to see it together. And Victor loves it, and Wolverine stops him and decides he doesn't want to be part of this cruelty, which is really a dramatic plot twist, that Wolverine leaves the army he was always a part of because he can't stand seeing civilians getting killed, which is believable as he had some form of principles. And Filmbrain complains the movie skips over all these things so quickly, but this is setup, and I'm tired of mentioning Kill Bill, so Superman the movie. So then he lives peacefully as a woodchopper in the Rocky Mountains and marries a loving wife. But his brother kills many of his former teammates, which creates a lot of tension of what will happen to Wolverine, and it is believable his brother would do that, as he is stealing their prowess for a Stryker, as we see later on, and he could take them out as he was one of the strongest warriors. And then Stryker asks him for his help to stop his brother, to preserve him and his remaining teammates, and tries to use this to get Wolverine to join him, which is clever because he tries to use his loyalty to his former buddies and the army, and his self-preservation, which of course are important to Wolverine to manipulate him, but Wolverine has turned his back on it and refuses. And then Victor kills his wife, which is a really dramatic twist, that he loses his wife to his brother, as both meant a lot to him, but his wife, because of her innocence, meant the most to him, and so it makes sense he would want revenge on his brother. And he fights his brother, but he ends up getting horribly brutalized, which is even more dramatic as he now isn't even able to revenge his wife and also gets physically hurt. And it did make sense he would get defeated by Victor, although the Blockbuster Buster complains that because he would be the best at what he did, he should have won, as he is one of the strongest mutants. But he isn't actually the best fighter ever. Victor is just extremely strong. It was just kind of an exaggerated statement. He's one of the best. He's very successfully killed many people during World War I, shooting people in the trenches, hit a guy on the head in the Civil War, stabbed many people in the trenches in World War I, and stabbed a guy in a defense tower in World War II, etc. So yeah, now Stryker offers him help again and convinces him to become a wild animal, a sight he has been avoiding, to give him an adamantium skeleton. And he accepts to be able to take out his brother, which is believable that he would now accept the help from Stryker, as he is so determined to take out his brother, as revenge is now all he has left. And the procedure almost kills him, of course, which is really dramatic and makes sense as metal is being pumped into his body. And so Wolverine would accept the procedure, as it would make him indestructible, giving him a chance against Sabretooth. And the Blockbuster Buster questioned whether he would even know whether it would work against Victor, but of course it would make him indestructible. Oh, and hold on a moment. Yeah, what is... And Film Brain complains that it doesn't seem nearly as dramatic as the previous films implied, but he almost dies and his heart beats 300 times a minute, and he suffers immense pain. I mean, he's twitching and everything, and he almost dies, and he complains that it's an overly dramatic fake-out death, when it seems as though he actually didn't survive the procedure. As we know, based on the previous films, he will survive, but it was just to show how painful it actually was, even though you're denying it was. And the Blockbuster Buster complains that in the comics it took a lot longer. It was very dramatic here, and it fitted the flashbacks we saw, which didn't make it seem that long, and we'd see about the same happen to him as we saw in the flashbacks, only the flashbacks hit at more of a nightmarish form, as there it was a fake, mutilated memory he had. And it turns out Stryker just wanted to use the procedure to test if he could survive the procedure to then use his DNA for Weapon 11. Now, Captain Logan complains it is unclear why Wolverine needs an adamantium skeleton in order for Weapon 11 to have a healing factor. But it is simple, they wanted Wolverine's healing factor so Weapon 11 can have an adamantium skeleton also, so they need to check if an adamantium skeleton works on Wolverine to then use it on Weapon 11. They need to see if the healing factor will allow him to survive. And Captain Logan also complains why he doesn't erase his memory before making him so powerful, but that is just it. He needs to remember that he volunteered for the procedure to not resist it with his immense strength and to thereby maybe disturb the procedure or allow him to use the adamantium when he partially has it to escape it. And he needs to volunteer because since he cannot be sedated, he would always struggle, and since this is a very precise procedure, that could ruin it as well. And of course the mental stress could destroy him. And so Captain Logan also complains that Stryker wanted him to volunteer and tricked him into volunteering through such elaborate means, instead of just forcing him into it, as he wouldn't have super strength, but he is an immensely strong and fast fighter and is difficult to capture. He can't be sedated, so he could easily escape. And of course he would become even stronger even halfway during the procedure and could then escape and ruin the procedure when it was halfway, and the mental stress could destroy him. And of course he is, before this procedure, still vulnerable and could possibly be killed, and since he's only one of his kind up till Lady Deathstrike is discovered, he's so valuable and important that you don't want to risk him dying, and you can easily force him to volunteer. So basically tricking him into volunteering, and it's of course very redundant, but you could get him to volunteer and basically emotionally force him into that by these elaborate means, because it's a lot easier to have someone manipulate his emotions if you have a mutant that manipulates emotions, and to just kill his team members who can a lot more easier be killed than when you have his brother who means a lot to him on your side. That's of course a whole lot easier, so it actually made a whole lot of sense. So you would want him to volunteer and to then immediately erase his memory after the procedure once you no longer need his mental strength and you can just dispose of him. That of course made a whole lot of sense, and because of that you wait till after the procedure, because if you do before the procedure he won't remember he volunteered and he will resist it, and he cannot be sedated, and he will use the parts of the adamantium you already got to escape halfway, thereby ruining the procedure. And also he complains that this dumb Wolverine doesn't figure out Stryker is using him even though he's there when bad things start happening.